Welcome to 5 Good Minutes.
You're listening to today's inspirational message
On the book of Romans with Brady Randall.
Well, yesterday we saw how Paul began the theme of how living by the Spirit produces and bears fruit for God. And what we saw was that this fruit comes from abiding or remaining and resting in the finished work of Jesus. This fruit is grown not from laboring, but from resting. And today he continues that theme in verses 5 and 6. For when we were in the realm of the flesh, the sinful passions aroused by the law were at work within us, so that we bore fruit for death. But now, by dying to what once bound us, we have been released from the law, so that we serve in the new way of the Spirit and not in the old way of the written code. And again, Paul, I believe, here is speaking to believers, and he reiterates that when we were in the old way, the realm of the flesh, now this can be before someone comes to Christ, and some have argued that this can also be true of a Christian who is living in the flesh. So when we were operating in our own strength by the law, we were in the realm of flesh. The sinful passions were aroused by the law, and thus we bore the fruit for death. Now, the law is not bad, but it arouses sinful passions. So here's maybe an example to think about. Sometimes I'll be reading an article online, or I'll see an article come across in social media, and the beginning sentences to this news article might be something like this: warning, this article contains graphic language or content. Now, what I usually don't do is say to myself, boy, that could be something that's triggering. I better stay away from that. Almost all the time, it makes me want to click away. And instead, I'm intrigued. I got to find out what's in here. What language could be so graphic? And I want to jump in. And that written warning or the law is not bad, but it stirs up my own sinful passions within me. Paul goes on to say, but now by dying to what once bound us, we've been released from the law. So when Christ died, if you are in Christ, you have died with him, no longer a slave to sin. We've been released by the law in the sense of being released from its penalty, which is death, and released from earning our way to keeping the law perfectly. And yet, because God is holy and set apart, because his standards are perfection, his expectation is that his people will be as well, for he will not ultimately be in the presence of any sin whatsoever. And now instead, we've been released to serve in the new way of the Spirit, not the old way of the written code. So before the person comes to faith, they may see the law, and the law has certain demands. Let's say, for example, you had an old classic car. It'd been sitting around maybe for years or decades. It looked like it was in good shape. It was painted. It looked like a powerful car, but it didn't have an engine. And if that car was to be in a race and the racing officials demanded that the car speed up for the race, they could command all they want, but without the engine, the car is dead to rights. It's just going to sit there. And in the same way, when you put your faith in Jesus, now you have an ability by the Spirit of God to obey what Jesus has commanded. That the Spirit of Jesus is the engine, so to speak. And the Spirit compels us to keep the commands of Jesus, not on our own strength, but in his. And I think that this is the idea of resting and receiving strength from the finished work of Jesus. Now we are no longer a slave to sin and death, but now a slave to righteousness. Now a slave, a servant to serve in the strength that God himself provides. And if you have any doubt about how strong this new way of life is, how strong the Spirit of God is within you, this same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is the one that lives and resides in you. The same Spirit is available and lives inside of us if you have believed, and enables us now to live out the life that Christ invites us to. So I want to invite you, would you pray that God would enable you to access this life through the Spirit of God today? And this is serving not because we have to, not just because we're commanded to, but rather because we get to. And thanks be to God through Jesus Christ.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.